Hello and welcome to another Innovation Explained video. The rapid pace of change and global competition have made it more difficult than ever for companies to truly differentiate themselves. New products and features are often quite quickly copied, and powerful brands are being built and destroyed faster than ever. So to truly differentiate a business and to build a strong moat, and a lasting one at that, you need something more. One example of such a method can be business model innovation, which is the topic for today's video. Let's get started. First things first, what is business model innovation? Well, a business model is defined as the way an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. Successful business models take a very holistic approach by integrating these different aspects of the business into a well-organized and thought-out system. So business model innovation is simply a novel way to put these pieces together to hopefully create a system that produces more value for both customers and the organization itself. So why is it important? Well, in short, business models define how a company approaches its business, and if done well, it can lead to competitive advantages that are extremely hard for existing competitors to copy, as they need to fundamentally change the way they operate and lead their businesses. So, in a nutshell, a good business aligns your actions with what the customer values and eliminates friction from buying, which together, of course, increases growth. But since it's also designed to deliver that value efficiently, you can increase profitability and thus the amount of value you can capture yourself as well. When done right, a business model maximizes the value of the business to each stakeholder, the company, customers, employees, partners, and of course shareholders as well. Now, in real life, business models are a very complex and multifaceted topic that ties into pretty much every part of the product, business, and organization, which means that no two business models are ever identical. Having said that, there are many common patterns out there which can help serve as useful examples and inspiration. So let's next look at a few common examples. First on the list is the subscription model, which isn't exactly new, but has been applied in pretty innovative ways in recent years. For the company, this provides a very predictable stream of revenue, which makes business planning much easier, especially for rapidly growing businesses. For the customers, subscriptions are generally much more flexible and also make it easier to buy, as the upfront investment is dramatically lower. And the model, of course, aligns incentives nicely, since if the customer no longer gets value, they'll stop paying you. Subscriptions have successfully been applied to more than just the obvious examples like news media and software, to physical goods like razors with the Dollar Shave Club, and even complex fields like healthcare. It's a great example of a win-win business model, but as is the case with every other business model, it's of course not ideal for every business. Next on the list is the freemium model, where a company gives away a free version of their product and then makes money by selling additional functionality or related products later. These days you're probably familiar with the model from countless software products like Spotify, Zoom, and Google Docs, but the model actually goes back way more than that. I haven't been able to trace the origins of the model reliably, but one early example is how in the early 1900s, Gillette gave away his razors for free along a wide array of consumer staples and then made nice profits by selling blades to those same folks later. These days this is obviously a pretty popular model because the internet usually leads to lower delivery costs, but increased competition and thus higher sales and marketing costs, which is especially the case with most digital products. The freemium model can obviously help get you a lot more attention, which can then lower those sales and marketing costs dramatically. But to get those benefits, you first of all have to deliver a lot of value up front and then still be able to deliver much more of it later. In fact, So much so that the value that you capture from that additional sale will also need to cover the costs of delivering that free version and leave you with a healthy profit. That's of course much easier said than done. At Viima, we've got this model to work beautifully for us, but it's taken a lot of focus and dedicated work. And even though many of our competitors have tried to do the same, they've really struggled with it because they haven't been as committed. Now, let's briefly look at a few other popular business models. Platforms are basically marketplaces where supply meets demand and they earn money by either taking a commission of the transactions, by charging for value-added services, or by running relevant advertising on the platform. A lot of new businesses go after this model because it's infinitely scalable and can be extremely profitable, but getting the platform off the ground so that it reaches critical mass to become self-sustaining is often extremely difficult because you have to acquire users on both the supply and demand sides, which can easily double your customer acquisition costs. The obvious trick around this, other than just throwing money at the problem, is to find a niche where that is a lot easier and then expand from there. Next, we have direct-to-consumer or D2C. Many product companies have traditionally relied on a network of resellers and value-added partners to try to grow more quickly and capital efficiently, but with the rise of e-commerce, that trend has been moving in the other direction. These so-called middlemen always need to charge their own profit margin, so they inevitably add cost to the end customer, and sometimes the value they add can be questionable. So D2C essentially eliminates that middle layer from the network, which can help the company better control the whole customer experience, in addition to obviously lowering costs and increasing margins. Now, where the real innovation in business model innovation often lies is actually our last category, which we call hybrids. Innovative business models always start off as hybrids because essentially they are always a combination of elements from other previous models, often just with a slightly new twist or applied to a new industry, which over time shape up to become a new business model that we call with a specific name, like some of the other examples we've shown here. As a matter of fact, if you look closely at the examples shown here, you might recognize that YouTube is actually a free ad-powered platform, but with a freemium offering for consumers, and that Dollar Shave Club is a D2C business, but it's also a subscription service. So, with all that, you might wonder, how do you go about actually creating business model innovation? Well, we'll next share a few tips that can hopefully help you with that. The first step, as with pretty much every innovation, is to start with customer value. There's many ways to go about this, but my personal favorite is the jobs to be done framework. If you're interested in learning more about that, I'll add a link that will explain the concept and methodology in more detail in the description below. Then, the next step is to focus on your strengths and capabilities. For example, if your product requires much less service than the competition and thus comes with a lower lifetime cost, you could potentially capture more value and at the same time sell more of it by turning it into a subscription service, as we covered earlier. Next, set your objectives. Some companies might focus on profitability, others on high growth, while some just want to provide the best services or product for their customers. This is a very decisive step because the goals dictate the business model you should choose. And the reason is that different business models serve specific goals better than others. For example, if you're looking to maximize growth, you should choose a business model where the customer gets almost all of the value to maximize adoption, like freemium. In the short run, you obviously won't make as much money, but this can create a significant long-term competitive advantage. Next, you might want to benchmark some leading innovators. There's a lot you can learn by simply observing patterns from other companies, which can serve as helpful inspiration for you. You can certainly look at the competition, but usually the best ideas actually come from looking at businesses from other industries that share some traits with yours. For that, A great resource is the patterns library from the Business Model Navigator, where you can find around 60 different business model patterns and a bunch of other useful tools. You can, for example, search for a specific business model, or even just for a well-known company to figure out how they've put together their business model. I'll add a link to the page for you in the description below. The fifth piece is to finally choose the model you want to go with. This is the creative part and also the one that usually comes with a lot of uncertainty. So before you commit to a model, do yourself a favor and put your ideas to the test and see if the assumptions related to your ideas actually hold true in real life. All too often they don't. And if you already have a business, this is of course the part where you would also want to run some numbers and create different scenarios to understand the suitability and profitability of each model for you. Anyway, the most important thing to remember is that your business model should always maximize the value and attractiveness for your customer while still accommodating your business goals. While it might look good in Excel, in real life, it doesn't work the other way around. To compare the different models in practice, you can create something like this quadrant chart here. The specific dimensions of the matrix can be very different depending on your industry and customer needs. But in a nutshell, the idea is that you can use something like this to compare your current market positioning with the competition and then repeat the same process for each customer segment you operate in. This really goes a long way in identifying opportunities for sustained differentiation. Ideally, you'd like to position yourself so that you meet the needs and expectations of one or more customer segments much better than the competition, specifically thanks to your structural business model. For example, if you sell services and you want to scale the business to a larger audience and improve margins, you have to basically productize the service offering. However, to achieve this, you have to choose which segments to go after so that you can actually standardize and maybe even transform your operating model to be able to deliver most of the value at a fraction of the cost and effort. Succeed at that, and you're likely to get a much bigger market share and also improve the margins of delivering that value. On the other hand, sometimes you might want to simply add services on top of your existing products to create more value for the same set of customers and thus increase the business through wallet share more than market share. The right path is always dependent on your current competitive position and unique strengths. There's no one size fits all here. Basically, if you just follow the 5 steps I've mentioned, I can guarantee that all of you watching this can come up with an innovative business model. Having said that, an innovative business model doesn't guarantee business success if it isn't aligned with, first of all, the realities of the market, or second, if you're unable to execute it well. So, our 6th and final step is to again put your model to the test and see how it performs and then tweak it based on the results as you go along. For example, you probably have heard of Post-its and Nespresso capsules as these brilliant innovations, but neither was actually commercially successful until the right business model was found and brought to life, which took 10 and 20 years respectively. So even if your product is brilliant, you might need a few iterations before you get all of this right, and even then, you still need to successfully execute on that business model. To conclude, I'd just like to remind you that business model innovation, when done right, can be one of the most powerful and underappreciated tools in business. And even though it isn't always easy, it doesn't require any crazy PhD degrees either. Anyone can come up with a successful business model innovation with a bit of clever thinking and hard work. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.